Welcome to Internet Safety, hosted by Donna Rice Hughes. Over the next hour, you'll learn practical and crucial tips on how to keep your loved ones safe in the digital world. Now, here is Donna.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Internet Safety, and I am your host, Donna Rice Hughes. And this week's episode, oh my goodness, you're really going to appreciate the guest that we have for you today. We are going to be talking about big tech accountability and the dirty dozen list. We have with us Lena Nealon. She's the Vice President and Director of Corporate Advocacy for the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, NCOSE for short. She holds mainstream medias accountable for facilitating, enabling, and profiting from the sexual abuse and exploitation of others. By posing as a child online and conducting in-depth investigations, she collects evidence that is then shared with policymakers and the public through campaigns like the annual Dirty Dozen List. Prior to joining NCOSE, short for the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, she was the founding director of Demand Abolition to confront sex buyers' role in driving the global sex trade. She is the founding member of World Without Exploitation and Harvard Kennedy School of Government's Working Group on Modern Slavery. She's published articles in such publications as The Wall Street Journal, The New York Times, Forbes, and Bloomberg. She herself is a survivor of sexual assault, and she has 4 young children. And Lena, this is one of the things I love about your bio. They are smartphone and social media free kids. Welcome.
So good to be here with you, Donna.
So tell us, what is the Dirty Dozen List?
Yeah, so the Dirty Dozen List is a campaign that the National Center on Sexual Exploitation started back in 2013 to really hold mainstream companies accountable for facilitating, profiting from, and enabling sexual abuse and exploitation. When we say mainstream corporations, we're talking about companies that you and I use every day, Donna. And unfortunately, a lot of them are really allowing the exploitation of both adults and children to happen. And this can be through hotel chains, ignoring signs of sex trafficking. It could be your credit card being used to buy pornography or deepfake pornography or to pay for sexual abuse. And as we know, it's social media platforms and gaming platforms turning a blind eye to protect the bottom line when it comes to protecting kids. So we call them out publicly. We collect a lot of evidence, and we invite the public to demand better as users, consumers, investors, and we have seen incredible changes through this campaign. So it's very exciting. I love leading it.
Yeah, it's great, and you've had so much success, and it's really been wonderful for us at Enough is Enough to work alongside you all in some of the ways that we're also trying to help hold some of these companies accountable, and then just really amplify what you're doing, because you're really boots on the ground on a regular basis, and that's what is needed, right, Lena, to really get these companies and businesses that put profits over safety to pay attention. It's hard to hold them responsible and accountable, isn't it?
It really is. When I first started here and I was invited to take on the corporate advocacy, I honestly was very skeptical. I was like, we're this tiny nonprofit. We're taking on these, billion, trillion-dollar companies.
Right.
I did not believe it. But it's incredible what, again, people raising their voices, the changes they can make. And companies like Google have told us it was because people wrote in and emailed and tweeted that we made specific changes. For example, defaulting students' Chromebooks to the highest safety levels, right? So it really does make a huge difference when people say what needs to be said and stand up for what they know is right and can move even these massive companies that have more power than most governments, right? Many governments, right? At this point.
Oh, there's no question. There's no question. And I always say it takes the stick and the carrot approach. And we want to talk to these folks behind the scenes, which you do, which we do, and sometimes we can move the needle that way, but oftentimes this public pressure is really what it takes, because then you get the media involved amplifying this. And I'll never forget, Lena, this was before you started there. It was the first year of Dirty Dozen, and I was meeting with executives at Google in DC. And we were trying, I was working with Dawn, who's now the president at Nicosi, and we were trying to get their attention on the ads for pornography and to do something about it. And so I was meeting with them, and I said, well, I just want to tell you, you just made the Dirty Dozen list. And they said, what's that? It was the first year. And I said, oh, let me show you. And oh man, they're just looking around, you know, on their little computer searching. And I said, there you go. We've been working with you on this behind the scenes and you've ignored us. Now you're on the Dirty Dozen list. And they said, well, we actually have already made progress. But anyway, I just saw the power of that right firsthand, you know, with these execs right in front of me. So congratulations and thank you for the great success. So before we dive into who's on the Dirty Dozen list in 2024 and why they're there and what progress has been made, let's just cover the fact that there is a global pandemic of online exploitation and online sexual exploitation, right, Lena?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we call it too, like the ecosystem of exploitation. And,
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's been steadily increasing, but COVID really turbocharged the abuses that we're seeing online because kids really moved online. I mean, the world moved online, right? And kids
Mm-hmm.
were on in greater numbers. And sadly, the instances of exploitation have only been increasing since then. And now with AI, we're seeing yet another turbocharge of exploitation, and maybe we can talk more about deep fake pornography and how high school students are weaponizing AI against their female classmates. So boys will take images of girls and make pornography images and even videos. So and it's not just for kids. We're seeing exploitation rise for adults as well. So it really is. It's scary. It's scary, and there's even more urgency for holding these companies accountable. And of course, it's the tech companies by and large that are
Yes.
enabling all of this. So,
Yes.
we hear stories every day from families who they just don't think that it can happen to their kids, or they don't understand what's going online, and the numbers of children that are, you know, contacted by adult strangers or solicited for sexual exploitation is continuously rising. We're in the 30s, 40s, even 50%, depending on what type of exploitation you're talking about. So there has to be awareness and there has to be action of truly how pervasive sexual exploitation and abuse is.
Yeah, and it really is, and you're right. There have been times where there's then been exponential surges, and we have just seen this in the past few years. Just to give some other numbers, in 2021, there was a threefold increase in imagery showing 7 to 10-year-olds. We call this child sexual abuse material depicting young people. The online sexual abuse and exploitation of children increased by 422% in the last 15 years. The Surgeon General, I'm sure most everyone has heard that our Surgeon General, who's done a wonderful job, I have to say, has really called out these big tech companies and social media in general for the fact and reality that there is a profound risk of mental health issues and safety just on social media platforms. And he's calling for change. And we keep saying that enough is enough. It's time to start treating big tobacco or big tech like big tobacco. And that started to change. That whole issue was when the Surgeon General got involved way back when everybody were going, oh, cigarettes aren't so bad, including my parents. Well, then we found out otherwise. So Lena, let's go to the Dirty Dozen list. And I want to start with one of the it's not a company, it is a law. It is called the Communications Decency Act, Section 230. We're not going to dive too much into that, but this really set the stage for the immunity that these big tech companies have had all of these years. And this went into effect in 1996 because I worked on that. So Lena, do you want to speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, this, like you said, this is not a corporation, but we felt so strongly that we wanted to put the Communications Decency Act, Section 230 on there because, as you said, it basically provides big tech with blanket immunity for all types of sexual abuse and exploitation. And
Mm-hmm.
it was 1996, right? This is before the advent of Google, and the
Mm-hmm.
intention of Congress with the Communications Decency Act it was rooted in trying to shelter children from, bad elements lurking in the new internet. But it has been continuously misinterpreted
Mm-hmm.
by the courts, and instead allows companies to say, we didn't post it. Someone else posted, a third party posted it, and therefore we are not held liable. So
Right.
just an example of the actual ramifications of this law that, like I said, it's become the Communication Indecency Act. There's nothing decent
Mm-hmm.
about this act. Our law center at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation is representing two boys who were exploited. They were enticed by a trafficker to send sexually explicit imagery through Snapchat. They were 13 years old. Sadly, we know like young people do get tricked into these things. And
Mm-hmm.
2 years later, this young man, he was finally able to extricate himself from the trafficker who was, threatening him and asking him to send more pictures. Started to get bullying at school because they found out that there was a compilation video of his sex abuse material on
Mm-hmm.
Twitter, and he reached out to Twitter begging them to take it down. He sent a picture of the license saying he's 16 years old. He was 13 at the time. Twitter came back saying no violation of policies.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until this young man became suicidal and his parents were able to intervene and by chance had a connection with someone at Homeland Security that Twitter finally took it down. But when we took it to court, Twitter said, even if we knew, we're not liable. And they
Mm-hmm.
used the shield of the Communications Decency Act. So we are really pushing for reform. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
bipartisan support that we must
Mm-hmm.
amend the Communication Decency Act, Section 230, because if we don't, these companies are going to continue getting away with knowingly allowing sexual abuse on
Right.
platforms.
Yeah, thanks, Lena. And that's one of my professional goals. I've been working on these issues for 30 years, and we were actually involved in the CDA in 230 when it was designed by Congress to protect kids from accessing pornography. So if they put filters in place, then this is what was happening back then, and something got through a filter, then that company wouldn't be liable because they had taken a good faith effort. That was
Right.
the intent of Congress, and that's why we even supported it then. But we knew we had a problem, Lena, because I got a call, oh, I don't know, maybe a couple of years after that, from a mom in distress. Her son had images of child pornography, that we called it at the time, on AOL. They
Wow.
contacted AOL to take it down. It took AOL days to take it down. And and they eventually did, but what we found out then is that their attorneys at because I told the mom, I said, you need to get a lawyer. I worked with a lawyer. You need to go after AOL for this. And they used Section 230. So I went to our law center at the time, the National Law Center for Children and Families. I said, oh my gosh, we've got a real problem. And that was the first case that
Wow.
that led to all of the other decisions that happened in federal court. And so it has been, like I said, it's a professional goal for me to see this amended. And that's why we put it in the Children's Internet Safety Presidential Pledge. And we'll talk about that when we get to the end. But let's go right to, we got to get this thing amended because that's going to make all the
We
difference.
do.
And there's a great law that we're all supporting, or a bill called the Earn It Act, that is led by Senator Graham and Blumenthal, and it has a majority of the Judiciary Committee that, not a majority, all of them actually supported this, bipartisan. Okay, Lena, let's go one by one. All right, let's talk Apple. All right, why are they there, and what progress has been made?
Yeah, so Apple really gets my blood boiling because they could do so much better. And for multiple reasons. First, we found that they refuse to scan for child sex abuse material. There is available technology that many of the bigger tech companies do use to identify known child sex abuse material. It's like there's like a fingerprint. It's called a hash, and it doesn't invade anyone's privacy. And Apple refuses to scan iCloud for this material. And there have been leaked messages where they'll say, the executives have said, oh, look at all the heat that Facebook is getting. We're not getting any because we don't do that. So this is just unconscionable. They need to do better. Also, their app stores are extremely deceptive, and they don't actually accurately tell parents what the dangers and the risks of what the apps are. I mean, even basic things like you're not supposed to be on social media until you're 13, but on the App Store, it will say Snapchat 12 plus. And we even found Nudify apps on the App Store that were rated 4 plus. So
oh my goodness.
To put in a picture and in seconds, create pornography was available on the App Store. And labeled 4 plus. So we've been working with Apple for many years on various things, making parental controls easier. They're so unintuitive and multiple steps. And for being one of the biggest companies, one of the richest companies in the world, they really do need to do better. So in terms of progress, we have seen some progress throughout the years, and one that we were particularly happy to see was that they now proactively blur sexually explicit content that comes into iMessages for kids 12 and under. Now we're pushing on them to expand that for 18 and under. We think they should completely block it, but at least that. And they did take down the Nudify apps that we showed them the evidence that we were able to find. But why is this tiny nonprofit doing Apple's job? They should be proactively scanning. Of course. And that there are still dozens of Nudify apps on Apple. So still need to hold them accountable and keep pressing on them.
That's right. And I love the fact that you brought up, and we've heard this so many times from law enforcement, they're not getting all the big hits that Meta's getting and some of these other companies that are actually reporting this. And so it makes these other companies that are actually much more proactive in doing the right thing. It's not that they've got an A from us, but they're better than Apple. And Apple's just been able to kind of skate right on through, and be stealth. So thank you, Dirty Dozen, and thank you, Lena. Let's go to LinkedIn.
Yeah, I know that was one that surprised people. It surprised us. Again, this is not, we put these targets on in part also to say, hey, okay, LinkedIn, probably not as bad as, Instagram or Snapchat, but they should be doing better. And we found on LinkedIn that they were also promoting Nudify apps and would even have rankings and articles about the best deepfake pornography apps that you could find. We also found that they are allowing known exploiters like MindGeek, which is the parent company of Pornhub, which we know has hosted sex trafficking, rape videos, child sex abuse material. They're being sued by more than 200 survivors. And they're allowing MindGeek and Pornhub to post as if they were a job like any other, an employer like any other. So we wanted to call them out for both of these. And within 2 weeks of us putting them on the Dirty Dozen list, they did proactively scan and remove any Nudify promotion ads or articles. So again, a great step forward.
Lena, can you just for our audiences describe or explain or define what a Nudify app is?
Yes. So it is basically an app that you can find, again, on Apple or Google Play stores. You can also go on websites that are dedicated to take a picture or a video of anybody's face. And you only need about 30 seconds of video from somebody. And with a click of a button, you can take that face and create pornographic images or pornographic videos. You can swap faces, and you can also take a picture and remove somebody's clothes. So there's the Nudify apps are removing someone's clothes. Again, there's deepfake apps. They're all interrelated. They're basically taking people's images without their consent and creating sexually explicit content. And because it's so readily available on app stores, we are seeing like a rapid acceleration of this being used primarily, again, against women and girls. Some of the nudify apps and the deepfake apps won't even work on male faces or bodies. It's only women. So this is a very gendered type of abuse.
Lena, thank you. So again, for our audiences, please describe to them what a deep fake is.
So a deep fake is technology, AI technology that can take something and alter it and make it look very realistic. You know, we met with Google and even their engineers were saying it's hard for them to tell if something is deep fake. And it can be something that's benign. You know, went viral, a picture of the Pope was taken in a puffy jacket, and that's a deep fake, right? It's more benign, but it looks very realistic. But 95 to 99% of deep fake is used to create deep fake pornography. So it's mostly used to create pornography. So again, taking images and creating video, images and videos and creating what looks like very realistic pornography. And I think it's very important to note this, that the effects on the victims of deepfake pornography, which is a form of image-based sexual abuse, the effects are almost the same as being sexually assaulted. It's violation of your body, the psychological impact, the socio-emotional impacts are the same as being abused physically. So it's important for people to take this very seriously because the ramifications are long-lasting, the trauma is long-lasting, and can have on looking for jobs or relationships. Just because it's a manipulated image doesn't mean that the emotional impact is not there.
That's right. And this can happen to adults and to kids, right? So that's really important. All right. So let's go to Roblox. I have two grandchildren that use Roblox. And gaming is huge, right? And the gaming platforms are really a predator's dream come true because they've got the ability to befriend kids on the games, to gain their trust that way as a fellow gamer, and to seduce them, to groom them, to exploit them, to traffic them, et cetera, et cetera. But why did Roblox make the Dirty Dozen list?
Oh, Roblox really makes my blood boil because the majority of their users are under the age of 16. A fourth are 9 and under. And it's a platform that most people think is for children. And it's basically a platform where anybody can make a game. So it's hundreds of thousands of games that kids can go on. But Roblox refuses to put on any safety controls on by default. So we have signed up as 5-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 11-year-olds, and within minutes, we will end up in games that they're called condo games, for example. They're basically simulated sex parties. We've gone into games where there's prostitution happening on the street. And it looks like, they almost look like Lego figures, but again, in a child's mind, it's very realistic, and it also gamifies sexual exploitation. And I have to tell you, a report just came out last week, and they called Roblox an X-rated pedophile hellscape. And maybe you can share this report with your audiences, Donna. But
yeah, we'd love to.
That they were able to walk in, they found chat rooms where people were openly trading child sexual abuse material. There were no age restrictions. A third party found about 12,000 erotic role play accounts on Roblox. And it included things like rape, forceful sex fetishes, and underage users that were willing to do anything for Robux. Robux is a type of currency that you can use on Roblox. And we, again, not only are pedophiles meeting each other, that is the place where they're grooming kids, and even using account names like I Groom Minors or Rape Tiny Kids. And Roblox refuses to do anything. So we're pushing for the Kids Online Safety Act, which is basically, it's basic common sense measures that's to put, to put the highest safety settings on for minors by default. And a lot
Yes.
of the other companies have done so, but Roblox, which actually allows children on their platform, has not done so. So I'm begging your audience to, if you're going to take action on one, take action on the Roblox platform, because I cannot believe that they are escaping greater scrutiny by policymakers and law enforcement.
That's right. And the Kids Online Safety Act, which we nicknamed KOSA, has wide bipartisan support as well. And it is seeks to, if it becomes law, it will actually hold all these platforms, social media, gaming, to set these defaults on, because it's so hard, isn't it, Lena? We do a lot of parent education, and we have to say, okay, with every single platform and every device and every gaming platform and every laptop that any of your kids have,
No,
you've got to
parents
go in.
battle.
You've got to go in and set them yourself.
Yeah.
And that is really a nightmare for parents, and quite frankly, impossible, when it's just a simple flip of the switch for these companies to just set the defaults on, right? That doesn't mean that a parent can say, hey, I want my kids to have access to everything, including porn or predators, and decide to turn it off. But we know parents aren't going to want to do that. We want to make it easier for parents. And that's what this is all about. So thank you for exposing Roblox. And wow, what a nightmare that is. All right, let's go to, okay, we've all heard of Snapchat. Right? We know some of the problems with Snapchat, Lena, but why are they on the list, and have they made any progress?
So Snapchat, Snapchat, whenever I ask law enforcement or survivors or parents which app they feel is the most dangerous, Snapchat is always in the top two, usually with Instagram. And the research shows that Snapchat and Instagram are always either toggling or tied for number 1 and 2 for the greatest sexual abuse and exploitation, like across platforms, with, number 1 and 2 for sextortion, which is using sexually explicit images, either created or obtained from a child or an adult, to then threaten them to send more images or to send money. They're always, top platform for initial contact by those who, by groomers. And it's where children are producing and sending their own sexually explicit material. So what does that mean? We're seeing a rise and a normalization of sexting, which sounds so benign, but we are hearing of cases of children as young as 9, 10, 11 who are sending nude images, and those are either shared with classmates, and then those classmates share them with others and they get out into the world, or they are shared unknowingly with adults, and those adults use them either for their own sick reasons, or post them on pornography platforms. So Snapchat, by its very design, is made for and was initially made for sexting. And they have made changes throughout the years, but what we keep pushing on them for is they really need to block, or at the very least blur, sexually explicit imagery when it's coming at children, because again, that's at the root. And we see predators on Discord or on Telegram or Instagram move them to Snapchat, because that they know that they can share images that will disappear, leave a trace. So, we put Snapchat on our watch list, not because they're not dangerous, but we did feel like they were making some more concerted efforts to increase safety, but they are by no means a safe platform, and could be doing a lot more.
They could be. And I will tell you that the former head of safety for Microsoft, who really did a fabulous job at Microsoft, Jacqueline Boucher, and she's a great gal. She went over to Snapchat. Yeah, she went over to Snapchat, and I know she's been working on this. But still, you're still fighting City Hall. You're fighting these multi-billion-dollar companies, and even someone on the inside with the best of intentions oftentimes has an uphill battle there. All right, so let's do one more before break. Let's talk about Spotify. What kid doesn't have Spotify?
That was another one that was utterly shocking. Yeah, and almost nothing shocks me anymore. And we were getting, in reach, because people will contact us and say, please look into this platform. We were getting in reach, and I thought, oh, people are probably getting upset about maybe some racy album covers. I could not believe some of the worst pornography, hardcore pornography I have been exposed to was on Spotify. And the way that people do it is through the album covers. And then you can create these playlists, and we'd find playlists of hardcore pornography.
Wow.
As you know, I have 4 children. We have a very open communication policy. I say, if you hear something or you don't know a word, ask me. And my daughter actually just asked me what was anime, and so I use those words when I do my research. And anime is, kind of benign. I put anime in Spotify and got flooded with anime porn. This year we actually found child sex abuse material sharing. So pedophiles sharing child sex abuse material on Spotify with networks that included tens of thousands of people, including minors. And they have done absolutely nothing. And this is people like, we also always get put like Spotify. I'm like, take a look at the evidence, because we post the evidence that we collect on the pages, obviously very blurred. And we often won't even put on the worst that we see. But Spotify, same thing there. They have parental controls, they have some filters, but none of this gets filtered out. They filter out, the S word, like the F word in songs, but are leaving hardcore pornography. And I have to say, I thought when we first put Spotify on, I was very optimistic that they would make some concrete changes, but this is the second year they've been on and have made no progress. So
Wow.
again, we really want to elevate this with parents, because it is one of these platforms that you think, oh, surely not. It's completely safe. You can't even see images, you can't chat, but they can't.
Shocking.
Through the playlist titles, and they're posting this horrific content.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about really when they do have the parental control tools, how often do they work? Do they really work to filter any of this? But Lena, we're going to take a quick break here. So thank you for this first segment, really important. And to those who are listening, please share this podcast. Parents need to hear this information. And we'll come back right after the break, and we're going to talk about some of the other companies that are on the Dirty Dozen list, and you may be surprised to hear some of these. And then we're going to talk about the role of government, and we're going to talk about a very important take action that you can take. So please join us after this short break. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our show. I'm Donna Rice Hughes, and we have been talking with Lena Nealon from the National Center on Online Sexual Exploitation. We've been talking about the Dirty Dozen list. We covered a bunch of the big guys that have made that list, many of them multi-billion-dollar companies. We're going to pick up. We were just talking about Spotify and how surprising it was, at least to me, and I think to you too, Lena, that what's been happening on Spotify, and you had mentioned they have been very slow to move and to respond. I think they've been on there, you said, for 2 years, but you did say they do have some controls. So my question to you on parental control tools, do they even work to filter out all the pathetic and illegal content, child sex abuse material and pornography and everything that is on Spotify?
No, they don't. And so not only is the parental tool faulty, but it's so deceptive, because parents might think that, as Spotify says, that it will filter out explicit content that is not appropriate for teens. But it doesn't. And it also, what's even worse is if you want to be able to block anything that's explicit from your children, you have to pay for a premium plan. And even then it doesn't work. So we tested all of this and couldn't believe how often, again, pornographic material, pornographic text, pornographic podcasts were completely bypassing the filter. So it would filter out music that had some, swear words, but wouldn't filter out sexually explicit content. And part of that is because those people who are uploading things have to mark it as explicit. And we found that many weren't marking it explicit. So again, they really are not, they're so inadequate. And we see this across the board with parental controls that are offered. They're very, very often hard to figure out. I mean, I'm on these platforms day in, day out. I'm watching their policies and trying to see what happens. And I can barely keep up with what's on, what's off. What did they change? Oh, wait, now it's on, but it was off. And parents are in a losing battle. And I want parents and caregivers to hear this because it can feel, there's a lot of guilt by parents, right? If their child is exposed to something. And sadly, this day and age, it's a when, not an if, of your child being exposed to something or someone who is harmful to them.
That's right.
We still say use the parental controls, but know that they are inadequate. There are a lot of tools. There are other tools that you can use. Like we advocate for Bark, which it's a third-party software that's monitoring what's happening and sends alerts to parents. You want to filter your router. So there are other measures to take. And then of course, talking to your children and providing them other safe adults that they can talk to as well. But these companies do not want to make it easy for parents.
No, they don't. They're making it really darn near impossible, right, Lena? So I'm going to cover two more real quickly, companies that are on the Dirty Dozen list, and then we're going to get to solutions. Okay, so parents, just hang on a minute. Okay, the next one is Microsoft's GitHub. What is GitHub? And why did they make the list?
Yeah, so GitHub is probably not something most listeners have heard of. It was new to us, but it's Microsoft owned, right? Again, one of the biggest companies that usually does very well and in the child protection space. But GitHub, the way to describe it is it's like Google Docs for software developers. It's a place where software developers can post codes for software, and then they can manipulate it, they can play with it. And what we found was that the majority of deep fake pornography codes were being hosted on GitHub. So I'll say that in a different way. That we're seeing this explosion of deepfake pornography, this explosion of image-based sexual abuse. And the main hub where this was happening and being created and disseminated and perfected was on Microsoft GitHub. And they hosted what are called repositories. And there was one in particular, Deepface Lab, which accounted for 95% of deepfakes in the world.
And that is so surprising because Microsoft has been a leader in actually tracking down and developing software to stop CSAM and all of this content. And here this is happening right under their noses. So have they made progress?
So yes, this is actually kind of breaking news progress. So we noticed that Microsoft made and GitHub signed a White House public commitment by the private sector to combat image-based sexual abuse. And GitHub made a commitment that they would combat this form of sexual abuse and exploitation. So we actually went back, we always invite the company, we send them a letter, we outline the problem, share our evidence, and then share recommendations. And we actually missed this, that a week after the Dirty Dozen list was revealed, GitHub proposed to their community a policy on image-based sexual abuse. And they always allow the community members to respond back. And interestingly, the one who hosted this Deepface Lab really took issue with this policy and was really upset, talking about censorship. And this policy did go into effect May 20th. And a few months later, that repository was shut down, as well as several other repositories, spaces where these deepfake porn codes were being shared. So we are very optimistic that this will at least stem this tide, stem the flow, and does put Microsoft, living up to their values on ethical AI, which they have been at the forefront of pushing. So we were happy with this win.
Well, congratulations. That's a huge victory. We're going to go to Meta. Everybody knows Meta. And Meta has made some progress lately, but one of the things we got really involved with Enough is Enough was when they wanted to do Instagram for kids, and we're like, no. You can't even make it safe for teens.
Right.
And you need age verification to keep the under 13s off, and now you want to do Instagram for kids. But okay, why are they on your list, and what progress has been made?
Oh, Meta is could be a whole show on
I
the
know.
platform and the many harms. You know, this was obviously like a no-brainer, and but we just wanted to continue elevating and making sure that the general public knew all the things that Meta was doing, and in particular Instagram, again, number one platform for perpetrators connecting with minors, forced extortion, the number one platform where sextortion images were being disseminated. It's the number one platform for where sex traffickers find their victims, both children and adults. I mean, constantly Meta platforms, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, Messenger, are at the top of basically every form of sexual exploitation
Right.
can name. And yes, they make progress, but it's always right before they're going to be dragged in for a hearing in front of Congress,
Hmm.
or the most recent changes that they made that we've been begging for 5 years to make teen accounts private. So random strangers, adults can't find team accounts. They finally did that the day before the Kids Online Safety Act was being marked up in the House, right? So
Right.
this pattern with Meta, this is the prime example of why we need Section 2, Communications Decency Act, Section 230 reform. We need to be able to hold these corporations liable for the extensive abuses on their platform. With
Right.
Meta, it's constantly too little, too late, and they just, pussyfoot around making little tweaks here and there, take a year
Hmm.
to do it, and only when there's major public, policy pressure from members
Yeah.
of Congress or really bad press.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And we just see it's too little, too late. In the meantime, kids' lives are being destroyed, and these companies continue to put profits over safety. And we know, and I'm just going to make a point on this because I want to get to the role of government here. But who are the biggest lobbyists fighting everything we're trying to get done in Congress and what these wonderful leaders on both sides of the aisle are doing in the Senate and the House? It's not the pornography industry. It's not the sexual exploitation industry. It's not the trafficking industry. They don't need to. It's big tech. And they're throwing tons of money and tons of lobbying money against anything to hold them accountable, like the Kids Online Safety Act that we were talking about, and like the Earn It Act, which would actually amend Section 230. So, Lena, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we see it on DC, and my colleagues, especially on the public policy team, they'll go in meeting with members of Congress, and then they see the 30 Google, lobbyists coming in. But we know that there, I think finally there's just, to use enough is enough. And I think that policymakers are really coming together. There's so much bipartisan support. And I think just disgust in general over big tech. And we saw this in many of the hearings, but in particular, particularly the January 31st hearing. I was actually 10 feet away from Mark Zuckerberg when he was forced by Senator Hawley to turn around and face the parents of these victims of children who died on and
Right.
because of Instagram and because of their lack of controls that advocates have been begging for years. And it was just, righteous anger and outrage on both sides of the aisle. And I really hope that that carries through, that we see some legislation by the end of this year, during the lame duck session, but hopefully this bipartisanship around protecting children online will carry into the whatever the next administration will be. I think we're done. We're done.
Yeah, there's
Big
only so
tobacco
much we can do, right?
right.
Yeah, there's only so much we can do here. And thank you so much for everything that you all are doing at Nicosi. And we're going to continue on the role of government. We've only got 10 minutes left, but I want to talk about the Children's Internet Safety Presidential Pledge. This is something that Enough is Enough started in 2016. We went to Donald J. Trump, Hillary Clinton when they were running. We said, if you're elected, we asked them to sign this pledge. Will you do the following? Aggressively enforce and fund the existing laws. And we had a list of things we asked them to do. Donald Trump signed the pledge and Hillary Clinton sent a letter of support. We have updated that pledge to the 2024 presidential pledge. It has been out to former President Trump and Vice President Harris now for a few weeks. We have not heard an affirmative back from either campaign. We know that they've gotten it. And Lena, let's just talk about the role of the president and the role of the White House, because in my opinion, we have got to have leadership at the top because everything can start to flow from there. There's a bully pulpit. There's a lot of things that can happen with executive orders, with a robust legislative agenda, and we're just asking them to prioritize the prevention of online exploitation of children. Here are just a few little factoids. Enforce the existing laws, direct the Surgeon General to investigate the public health issues of everything that we have been talking about and make recommendations to the administration and to Congress, to support these bipartisan laws to hold big tech accountable, to support laws to amend Section 230. And we've got several other items in there. How important do you think it is that we have White House leadership?
Yeah, it's so important. First, I just want to thank you for leading this effort. You know, we're proud signers, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, of this pledge, and many other organizations have signed onto it as well. It's so important. I think no matter what side of the aisle you're on, you know, obviously what the president, you know, the statements that the president makes and what the White House is doing is so important. You know, you name several of the reasons, but you know, first and foremost, it just brings attention to these issues, and we still need to be educating, you know, parents, caregivers, educators, the general public. You know, sometimes I forget because I'm in this every day that there's still a lot that people don't understand. You know, the FBI has been issuing warnings about sextortion, and like parents just don't know about it. So when the president makes a statement like this, it garners attention, and we need to raise these issues to the fore. It signals that it's an issue that will and should be taken seriously.
Right.
You know, and then when they make a public pledge, we can hold them accountable. And
exactly.
you know, not just the president, but, and you said, what's the role of the White House? You know, if they are making this pledge, you know, we saw with the Biden administration that they created a task force examining and elevating online sexual abuse and exploitation,
Right.
and actually had several commitments made by, you know, corporate entities. They just released another one I mentioned with GitHub in the private sector entities, saying they're going to combat image-based sexual abuse. And now, because of the White House initiative and these companies, you know, wanting to look good and making commitments, we use those now and say, okay, Cash App, you made a commitment. What are the policies that you are following up with? Like, how are you implementing this? So enormous, you know, incredible power. So again, really important. I hope that whoever is elected will sign this pledge and really make child online safety a priority of their administration. It is way past time.
It is, yeah.
It needs to happen.
It's way past time, and I just want to say that this is a nonpartisan issue that has wide bipartisan support. We're living in such a divisive culture right now. So many of the issues that people care about, they're divided over, right? This is not one of them.
Together, yes.
This is not one of it. This is one that we all want to see. It doesn't matter what side of what party you are, doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter your color, it doesn't matter anything. If you've got an internet connected child in your life, you care about these issues. And here's the other thing, Lena, and I know at Nicosia you guys do this too, but we work on educating parents and empowering them. We're going to end with this. We also work with the corporate responsibility and accountability piece, and then also with the role of government and at the state and the federal level. But one can't do the job of the other. It's not parents' job to protect their children from criminals that aren't even being prosecuted by the Department of Justice. You know, that there were over 105 million CSAM, child images of children being sexually exploited, reported last year, highest ever. And we know that there's only funding to go after a very small segment of that. So one of the things we're asking here, and we're asking these candidates to sign it now, not after they're elected. We want to know now.
Right.
Let's let the voters know now. Are you going to prioritize this? Because this matters to us. And so I want to let everyone know that we started a petition, and you can go to enough.org. If you're as concerned about this as we are, and I hope you will be, and especially now since you've heard it here on this show, go to enough.org. As a concerned citizen, sign as a concerned citizen, sign this petition, because we're going to be sending this to both of the candidates, letting them know that Americans care about this. And right now we know candidates care about votes. So it's important that you do that now. And Lena, thank you to NCOSA. You all signed as a supporting organization. There are almost 70 or more now, representing millions and millions of Americans. So Lena, let's just go back to what can parents do. It's a mess out there. Okay, we get it. We know. We're doing it all the time. You're an expert, I'm an expert, and we can hardly keep up ourselves. But we want you to know that we're here for you. And one of the most important things you can do is keep the lines of communication open with your child. We encourage you to implement non-technical measures to protect your kids on all these devices. Seriously consider not even letting them be connected until the 8th grade. That's my opinion, Lena. You can weigh in on that. And then turn on the parental control tools, especially the filtering, the time controls, and the monitoring tools. Lena, what are your final words on that?
Yeah, I mean, take hope. I think there will be change. We're seeing it. And I think, again, the government, parents, there's a parental uprising happening, and we want all parents to join it. Yes, talk to your children, have open lines of communication, give them other trusted adults they can go to. They're put on parental controls, but there are other tools that you can use. I'm going to read Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation. It will be a great education too on just the online world in general. But really, and join the fight. Join Enough is Enough and the pledge. Take action on the Dirty Dozen list. We have seen countless times that when people, especially parents, hold these companies accountable and ask them to do better, they actually do make changes. So take hope, join the fight. I'm hopeful for 2025 for our children's and our own futures.
Well, thank you, Lena. And how can our listeners find out more about NCOSA? Where can they get information? Can you give us your information, your website, and everything else?
Absolutely. So can learn more about NCOSA at endsexualexploitation.org, or you can go directly to the Dirty Dozen list at dirtydozenlist.com. But our main website does have a lot of information, resources for parents, and ways that you can get involved.
That's great. Thank you so much, Lena. Thanks for being with us. We could really just spend more hours on this for sure. But thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for, you all are really moving the needle and you're leading the charge, and having you on board, leading this Dirty Dozen list is just fantastic for all of us, really, not just in America, but around the world, because these companies are impacting kids all over the world. So until next time, everyone, thank you so much for joining us at Internet Safety. I'm your host, Donna Rice Hughes. And remember to go to enough.org, sign the petition. We also have a lot of free resources for you there. Sign up for our newsletter, and please share this podcast. And until we meet next time, thank you so much, and God bless y'all.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Internet Safety with Donna Rice Hughes, designed to educate, equip, and empower you to keep your children and family safe in the digital world. Until we talk again, have a beautiful and safe week.